Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be making that viral succulent wreath that has been going all over the internet. And to be honest, it's perfect timing. If you watched my last video, you'll know that we recently redecorated my entire patio to come out of the theme of Christmas. However, if you watch till the end, you'll know that we also still had this big red like cranberry style wreath on my door. And the problem is at this point it's past Valentine's Day, so I can't even play it off that it's red for Valentine's Day anymore. It's just out of season, so we need a new wreath. And being that I love to torture myself by doing Pinterest crafts, I figured it would be the perfect opportunity for us to build our own succulent wreath. So if you also want to build a succulent wreath, or if you just want to watch somebody suffer through building a succulent wreath, then keep on watching and we're gonna get into it right now. Okay, before we get into crafting, I just want to make a list of all the things that you're going to need if you plan on making this wreath at home. First off is a wreath form. I pre-bought this one. It just seemed like a more economical option. However, if you want to build your own wreath form, you can literally just Google wire wreath form and then fill it up from there with sphagnum moss. If you already have those supplies on hand, then obviously go that route. I just don't have wreath forms on hand at any given moment, so I bought this pre-made one. Next up, you'll need some succulents. I bought these ones off of Amazon. I bought 20 to start. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not sure if this will be enough, so as we get into it, I'll let you know about how many succulents I use. And to go off that, I have a 16-inch wreath form. So kind of looking at what I have right here, I don't think it's enough, but with that said, I did preemptively buy both these buckets of succulents as well as these 3 little guys from Home Depot because I specifically wanted some darker ones in there too. And if that still isn't enough, I have a lot of succulents through my backyard, so we can kind of take cuttings from there, but stay tuned to see how much that wreath gets filled up with the Amazon ones. And finally, this last piece is totally optional, but I have these greening pins. These are just going to help the succulents stay inside the wreath better. You technically don't need them. Okay, the fact that these are optional was determined to be a lie, but I'll talk about that more later in the video. Anyway, if you want to get started on this project right away and don't specifically have greening pins, you can also use bobby pins. So fun fact, try those out. And the longer you have the wreath, the deeper the succulents roots will get, so they'll kind of just like automatically get anchored in there. I'm personally just kind of paranoid that every time I open and close my door that the succulents are going to be like flying out, so I just want a little extra insurance in there too. So with that said, let's go outside and let's get wreath making. Phrase I thought I would never say in my life. Here we go, you guys. I am so excited to see how this wreath turns out. But before we get started putting any of these succulents inside the wreath itself, we actually have to clean them up first. So you'll see on this first pass that I don't clean that much off the roots, and that was actually a big mistake. I was seeing this in other videos where people were completely pulling off all the roots, and I thought that was crazy, but it's actually really the route that you're going to want to go down. Trust me when I say this, it's going to make them way easier to put inside the wreath later on. However, I will put a picture right here of what was kind of the optimal amount of roots to leave on here for me. Even if you completely take them off, don't worry, they will grow back. Although one thing that I didn't do here because I'm well impatient is that if you are clean cutting the roots off with scissors, to give them a little time to callus up. Now typically this is something that you're going to want to do over the period of like a day or two. I just kind of missed that piece. Another very important thing I forgot about before I got started putting my succulents inside the wreath form is to get it wet. Now this is going to be particularly helpful if you buy one of the ones like I got that looked like it came out of the 90s and has probably been sitting on a shelf since before I was born. It's really hard and crusty, so soaking it with some water is really going to help loosen things up in there and get your succulents in there much easier. Anyway, I found that my succulents had a variety of stem lengths. Some of them were pretty long and that was really helpful, but for the ones that were super short, this is really where the greening pins come in. Now I'll put a picture right here of how I use them specifically. I'm no florist and this is my first time ever using them, so maybe I was doing them wrong, but I used 2 methods. If they were smaller succulents, I just put them over the complete top of it, and for the larger ones, I kind of anchored them down on one leaf specifically. This leads me into making the holes in the wreath before you get into adding the succulents in. So I tested out a couple different tools. I used chopsticks, I used little shish kebab sticks, a few other things, and the chopsticks really seemed to be the best tool for me, just based off of the thickness of the chopsticks and the stems that I was putting in there. Now it took me until I was almost completely done with the wreath to realize that this was the best method for doing it, but if you stick the chopstick through and then just poke it all the way through the other side of the wreath, it makes a really nice hole for you to stick the stem right into, so I would highly recommend doing that. Additionally, if you're using this specific wreath, you'll note that it does have netting around it. For some of the bigger stems I had, I did need to get a pair of scissors out and just cut some extra holes in the netting to make it a little bigger and accommodate those stems. Throughout my wreath adventures, I would periodically shake the wreath to make sure that it wasn't going to lose any of the beautiful succulents that I had so far. And as for how many succulents I did end up needing, I'll put a picture right here of how full it was when I finished my box of 20 succulents. Now again, I was using a 16-inch wreath mold, and while it was definitely still pretty bare at this point, honestly I wouldn't have hated the results and I think it still would have been cool to just let it fill in over time, particularly if you're on a budget and don't want to go hog wild buying succulents. A few other words of wisdom I can share now that I'm an expert wreath builder. First of all, of course, you want to be careful with your succulents, but at the end of the day, they are succulents, so inevitably leaves are going to fall off, and that's totally okay. The cool thing about succulents is even if they do lose those leaves, is that you can actually just place them on top of soil and they'll literally propagate themselves, so it's no stress at all. Finally, in terms of buying your succulents, I really recommend buying them in bulk. Again, if you're somebody who's impatient like me and just needs to start this project tomorrow, then of course, you can go to your Home Depot, and buying the larger pots with multiple heads inside of there will be your better bet there, but I would really highly advise against buying the single pots from Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever you get them from. They're just not the best economical option, as they're typically like $3 to $6 each. Anyway, with that said, let's fast forward in time and look at our final product. Overall, I am so happy with the results. I think it turned out really, really cool. All in, this wreath did end up costing about $100, which I will admit is a lot for a wreath, at least for me. Although with that said, if you were to buy one of these live succulent wreaths on Etsy, for example, they're typically around $300 for one of this size. So I guess you could consider this a bargain. Particularly if you're somebody who has a ton of propped succulents laying around that you're not doing anything with, this would be a great way to put them to use in a really unique way. As for how to care for this wreath, you're going to want to water it about every 1 to 2 weeks, depending on what your specific climate is like. Possibly lay the wreath in a big bowl of water, and definitely try to avoid spraying the top of the succulent, as they can mold and rot out that way. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know down below if you would ever build one of these wreaths yourself. It was actually a ton of fun, and I highly recommend it. If you like this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.